Hey guys, G here from The Way Within. Welcome to the show. Today's show is about a Q&A about all the fasting questions I've been receiving on my Facebook account after the article that went out last week about the things I learned in 50 days without food. It's just, the response has been incredible. So thank you so much for those who reached out. I actually made a ton of new friends. And one of them actually is going to be on the show today. We had a Skype call this morning just sharing some ideas on his journey and what he thought. And I recorded it, and I figured, what better thing to add to the Q&A for today's fasting show of all the fasting questions to just throw that in there. So I'm going to be doing that, and then afterwards answer some questions, put that in there. So I just really hope you guys enjoy the show. Episode 3 was our last show. It was Into the Ice with the Iceman Wim Hof, where he shares a bit of his personal story, and there's so many more amazing episodes to come. Ebook is on the way, should be out soon. So please just sit back, relax, enjoy this episode, and I will see you guys on the other side. Peace.
You're ready to wake up, you're going to wake up. And if you're not ready, you're going to stay pretending that you're just poor little me. And since you're all here and engaged in this sort of inquiry and listening to this sort of lecture, I assume that you're all on the process of waking up.
And as you wake up, a funny thing starts to happen. You'll start to see the world in a different light. And eventually, when you're ready, you'll start to look within. Who are you? This show was created to assist you on your journey. Welcome to The Way Within. So the response this week has been incredible. I think I could never expected that many people being into fasting the way they were. So I just, again, a lot of gratitude for everyone who reached out. There's a bunch of questions. A lot of them I'm putting together an ebook to answer. I think about putting together a community, a group as well. So let me know if you guys would want to be part of that. Just basically so people can fast together, go on their journey together, share their experiences together. First off, the one thing I want to say is I'm not an expert. I'm not a doctor. I'm not a nutritionist. I'm not any of these things. I'm just a person who likes to experiment on myself and share my experiences. So this is my perspective of a lot of these ideas. It's a lot of philosophy and theory of my own. So if it doesn't resonate with you, that's fine. Let me know, or do your own research. Challenge it. You got to challenge everything these days, because I feel like a lot of the information that we're spoon-fed has a lot of motivations behind it. Sometimes with good intentions, sometimes with profit intentions, sometimes probably with no intentions. So, listen with an open mind, guys. These are my views. So I'm going to just get right into it. So someone asked, the first question is, do you get sick when you're doing a fast? I wouldn't say it's getting sick. You could feel elimination or detox symptoms. It's basically your body is starting to change. It's starting to adapt and starting to cleanse more than anything. So the fruits and the veggies are cleansing. When you let the body rest, it's going to start eliminating stuff. So you might get a lot of mucus coming out. Your bowel movements might change. You're stirring up stuff that's been really lodged within you for a long period of time. So you will get symptoms. You can get symptoms. Maybe you won't. Everyone's different, but expect changes to happen, and they might not feel comfortable for sure. Someone asked, what is dry fasting? Basically, every night when you sleep, you're dry fasting for at least, however long you sleep. That's no water or no food. On my fast, I did the longest I did was 4 days dry fasting. So it was 4 days with no food or water. And I did everything that I would usually do normally. I went to the water park with my kids in Niagara Falls. I was working, I was moving. So I felt okay. A lot of times in your mind, you're thinking, can I do this? No food or water for 4 days. I should probably die about by now. But I was just every day just really being conscious of how did I feel? Did I feel okay? So I'd be very careful with anything you do. And please talk to your doctor first before doing a fast, or your healthcare practitioner. So I'm not recommending anyone to do it. It's something that you sort of have to feel from within. If you feel ready, you want to try it, just go really slow and take it easy. So dry fasting, I feel, is very, very powerful. There's not a lot of studies or information out there, but I think it's what a lot of the ancient mystics would do, is the dry fasting. Sleeping, how is your sleeping? Better or worse? When you think about sleeping, most people think more is better. So if you're sleeping 8-10 hours, you're getting a good sleep. When I was doing the fast, I found that I was sleeping less, but I felt like I was trying to sleep more. If I woke up, I'd be like, oh, I need to sleep. I'm not getting enough hours. It was very mental. It was like the numbers game. But when I actually woke up, I felt great. I felt energized. So I felt like I was sleeping less, but the quality of sleep was better and I had more energy overall, if that makes sense. Some days obviously better than others, but throughout the fast, I felt a lot more energy. And when I say energy, it's not like the type of energy like I'm going to go run through a wall and do a crazy workout, or after you drink a coffee, you feel this boost of energy. It was more like a mental energy, like a clarity where I could focus for long periods of time and not get tired. And I had a calmness to me. So I wasn't like all up and racy and just energetic in that sense, but I had this overall energy where I could get through the day no problem. Sometimes I'd have friends come over and they're all eating nachos and I'm making food for them, all the stuff that they love that I'm trying to get rid of out of my house. And by the end of the night, they had to drink a coffee to get boosted back up, or they had to, have a drink or a beer or something just to really boost them back up. And I was not eating anything at the time, just drinking a little bit of juice, and I felt great. I felt like I could stay up all night. I felt engaged in the conversations. So it was a big difference for me and a big eye-opener, that things that you don't really realize when you're not fasting or you're not in that state. So transition, people ask about taking it slow. This is the most important part of any change in your life, is go easy. Take it really slow. It takes 1 to 2 years really to start, healing your body and transitioning to a different way. So you're not going to wake up one day eating a standard American diet or even a healthy diet like that's got a lot of meat, a lot of animal proteins, the next day go fruitarian. Your body's going to go into some sort of shock, healing reaction. And it's going to take a while to adjust. You'll probably get a lot of gas and bloating and all these things. And there's a lot of factors that are involved that I'm going to try to get into in the ebook, but I'm not going to get into now. But yeah, transition is good. What I would suggest, most important, is awareness. So the first week, try not to change anything, but write down every single thing you put into your body. Be aware. I used to think I was eating really healthy. But when I started doing food journals, I realized my proportions were out of whack. I went vegetarian. I was eating all these grains to substitute for the meat. This is going back to 2008, 2009. And, I knew I had to eat more vegetables and raw vegetables, but I'd have that one big salad during the week, and my mind would always remember that. But when I looked at it on a daily basis, how much raw vegetables or fruits I was eating was very, very limited. But your mind doesn't remember that, because you're so busy with all these other distractions. You just don't take the time to have that awareness. So the first step is awareness. Write down what you're doing for the first week. Someone asked me about the champagne drink. So with the Master Fast protocol that I did, it was mainly grape juice and lemon juice every day in a 6 to 8 hour window. Outside of that was dry fasting with weekly extended dry fast, 24, 48 hours. And, at the end of the month, I was pushing a little bit longer, 3 or 4 day dry fast. In addition to that, there's something they call psyllium pudding. It's basically psyllium husks, bentonite clay, and activated charcoal, all food grade, that is mixed together that helps draw toxins out. So you're taking a tablespoon of that a day or two, and it goes through your intestines and pulls out all these toxins, so that as you're eliminating, as you're fasting, all the toxins are coming out. You got to get them out of your body or you're going to get hurt. You're going to not feel well. You have these detox systems. You can actually, Gino talked about him burning out his kidneys when he just did a grape juice fast by itself. All this cleansing was going on, and it could hurt you. So you got to be careful and go slow. So the champagne, to answer the question, is more, I guess, like the apple cider vinegar, the baking soda, is to hydrate you for the dry fast. So you start and break it, the dry fast, with the champagne drink. The enemas are another thing that I highly, highly recommend. Start with warm water while you're fasting. It's helping, again, to clear out the bowels. Any toxins that are coming through, you're getting them out. And I like doing the lemon enemas. At first, a little bit intense, so start with warm water. But once you get going, the lemon actually really helps to break down all the stuff, the mucus and compact and fecal matter that's in your intestines, and you'll feel it. So when I passed the parasites, it was usually after a 3 or 4 day dry fast broken with a lemon enema. So it's a really strong thing. And I would almost feel like when I knew it was time for the dry fast to come up, I feel really achy, and I would start not feeling good. So the first 2 or 3 days in the dry fast, I felt really good. Whereas by the end of it, I felt something was coming up. I would do the enema and something would come out of me. I'm still waiting for a lab to send some tests out. But I from what I did research on the internet, what I looked at, it looks like either a rope or tapeworm. And a lot of people have said that also. Some people said it could have been intestinal lining. I saw a lot of lining type stuff come out throughout a lot of my eliminations, and nothing really looked like this. This looked like a long tube with something on the end. And yeah, I'm pretty sure it was some sort of worm, which is crazy that I've been eating as clean as I do for at least the last 10 years. And there's still things that are lodged deep within. Who knows where they're coming from? Now, some people ask about the social aspect. That's probably the biggest challenge, is changing your attitude around being social, because food is a social thing. Food is everywhere. The restaurants, the shopping, breaks in your day. You wake up, you eat breakfast, then you have lunch, then you have dinner. So as you fast, your relationship to all these things starts to change. You start seeing things in a really different light. So it's good to have support. It's good to have other people that are doing it with you. And, maybe you might feel like you want to isolate yourself a little bit just to resist the temptation. If you're not that strong-willed, maybe it's a good idea. But I think the whole purpose is to transcend that, is not to suppress or hide from these feelings. It's to tell people, if you're afraid to, and I talked to Martin about this in the second half, is, share people with what you're doing, why you're doing it, and how you feel, if you feel good or bad. But the social is the issue. And on top of the socials, the people around you are going to start judging you. You start losing weight. They think you're sick. They're going to tell you look bad. They're going to tell you to start eating. They're going to tell you all kinds of things. But, you have to be strong, because I think part of this whole process is also shedding, I guess that sort of perception of yourself that people are projecting to you. And it's about, transcending that. It's about becoming bigger than that and knowing who you are from within. That the physical means nothing, that what people say about you doesn't mean nothing. It's you start having a relationship with yourself on a different level. And that was one of the profound things that I had, was that, yeah, it still hurts when people say stuff. And it's still, you want to lash back and you want to sort of defend yourself. But you have to come from a place of understanding that they have a different, I want to use the word ignorance. They're a little bit ignorant because they don't understand what you're doing and they want to judge you. And if they don't even try it, they don't even care to try it, but they want to tell you what's good for you. Think about where they're coming from. Think about the fear they have in making changes in their life, or the fear of being open-minded. So yeah, it's a good question. Very, very important. Did my worldview change? Absolutely. The relationship to food changes, and food is such an important part of everyone's life that you start changing the way you look at everything. If people ate less, how would that impact the world? If you were healthier, more open-minded, more clear, how would that impact the world? And I can see the changes within myself, and I'm so excited to get other people doing it as well. I got my mom doing it. She lost 10 pounds in her first, I think, 2 or 3 weeks of just transition. She hasn't even gone on the fast yet, so I've been helping her with that. Is fasting something everyone should do? Absolutely. I think weekly fasting, I'm doing once a week. Every Monday, I'm doing a 24-hour dry fast. Intermittent fasting, I'm keeping up with. I think it should be a regular part of everyone's diet because everyone can benefit from it. But again, go slow, find what works for you. Did you notice any changes in hearing, sight? They were very subtle. The world does look different. I noticed I felt a lot of mucus clearing from my ears as I was swallowing. I could feel it as the fast went on. And that's what they say to expect, that as you're clearing all the mucus throughout your body. I'm really reading a lot about the mucusless diet, Arnold Ehret's work, and Professor Spira. Professor Spira is going to be on our next podcast sometime next week. And it talks about all these foods, like the fatty foods, the nuts, even the grains, obviously the meat and the dairy, the oils, how they create mucus and congestion within our body. And when you take them out, the body starts cleansing itself and gives it the opportunity. So I really, really experienced that on many levels, for sure. Working out, this is a big question. A lot of people are asking me, were you able to work out? I didn't work out before the fast. I actually started doing a little bit of workout during. I was doing some push-ups, doing some more pull-ups, sit-ups. I wasn't wanting to build or get stronger during the fast. I was just trying to move a little bit. The rebounder was really important, just to move the lymph, because there's no real pumps in your lymphatic system. So I was getting on the rebounder, doing some jumping jacks, inversion table when I could. But I felt energy to work out. And I know there have been people that have done the fast and been able to work out right through. And 1 or 2 people that I have heard of through the master fast system actually gained weight. So anything is possible. I think it depends what you're built with, what your cells are built on. When you start cleansing, all the weak stuff starts getting eliminated first, but then you can build back. I put on 7 pounds in 1 week. And I know that it'll come back with the right ingredients, the right building blocks. It'll be even stronger. People say their second or third fast, they lose less or not as much. So I think as you continually fast and rebuild, fast and rebuild, you can start making a whole new you, an improved you. So my plan is to fast twice a year now. I'm going to fast in the spring and in the fall, probably 40 days. I don't think I'll need to do more than that. And then my diet ongoing right now, I'm doing mainly a mono fruit meal a day, or I'll add in a secondary snack. So today I'm doing just cantaloupe. That's going to be my meal. Melons you should eat alone. Look up fruit combining charts. I'm going to post that in the ebook as well. So I'm going to have melon for dinner. I put a whole cantaloupe melons on the menu. I just cut up a small piece. I'll save it for later. And I had an afternoon snack today, which was basically some bananas and some dried figs. And it really feels good. I used to hate dried fruit, like hate it. And now I found this newfound love because your palate starts changing when you fast. And you have that less addiction to all those chemical foods. And now the dried, unsulfured foods, which I got a few here. Here's from Costco, organic apricots. If you're watching this, you can see the picture. Sulfite free, please make sure, it's really important. Dried baby bananas, amazing. Organic figs. And I buy them in bulk. Organic raisins, again, sulfite free. Really important for me to have all these new foods. And you're don't worry about it now. If you're thinking too much, I can't do that. Just do the fast, see how it feels, give it a shot. You have the rest of your life to eat all the foods you do now if you decide not to. But if you really give it a chance, you'll see that your whole palate can change. Mine did, for sure. I'd also say about the working out, it's good to stay active, to keep everything moving, like some yoga and stuff. But you have to think about, what is your intention of working out? Why do you feel you need to work out all the time? Is it because it makes you feel good? Are you addicted to working out and the endorphin release? Because there's other ways to do it, through breathing. Or are you worried about the way you look? Are you really self-conscious about maintaining, I don't want to get too skinny, or I don't want to lose muscle mass? What is the reasoning behind that? These are some of the layers that start getting involved when you're on the fast. You start questioning these things, which is really important, because the fast is about cleansing. You're going to have to sacrifice something. You're going to have to probably shed. You're probably going to look bad. You don't have to look bad, but you might be perceived as looking bad and skinny and weak. But that's what we're trying to do here. We're trying to clean ourselves and then come back as a new and better. So then we get to rebuild and do all this working out again. So I'd really, really question the reason why you doubt that you can do it. I can't lose that much weight. It's unhealthy. Well, if you're thinking about doing a fast now because you think you're unhealthy, how can that be more unhealthy? Again, just questions to ponder. What else do we got here? Supplements used in herbs. I talked about that. There's also some tinctures in the Master Fast group. I've been thinking about putting together a kit that's a starter kit with a shorter fast of my own that's going to follow up the ebook. Put together some herbs and stuff. I think for sure in the beginning, I'm part of a company called Holy Shit. It's an all natural herbal supplement. It's got just 4 ingredients in it, all herbs, wildcrafted and sourced. It's one of my businesses because it works. Because I knew a lot of people were having trouble going to the bathroom, and I saw people in my family, but they're not willing to change their diet. So I figured this is something that is natural that can actually help them start eliminating and, I guess detoxing in a sense. Whereas most of the stuff in the market like X-Lax and Metamucil, they don't have the best ingredients in it, in my opinion. But again, when you're fasting, you want to stay away from supplements, you want to stay from proteins, because you just want to let the body rest and heal. Someone asked about blood results. I got my blood tested at about day 45. All the tests came back normal. I had a little bit of protein in my urine, obviously with an extended state of ketosis. That's normal. Well, it's not normal according to Western, but it's expected that after fasting that long, that should happen. The only thing in my blood test that was low B12. I've had low B12 since 2009 when I went vegetarian. I personally don't believe in the blood work. My family wanted me to do it to be safe. What I mean, I don't believe in blood work. I don't think it's that much of an indicator of how healthy you are. I think it's a good snapshot of what's going on today. But overall health, I guess there's some things it can indicate and point to. But I don't even know if B12 is supposed to be in our blood. Maybe it's supposed to be in the tissue. And I talk about this in the second half, so I'm not going to get too much into it now. But yeah, I really question a lot of that kind of stuff in regard to what is blood actually telling you. One time I did live blood cell analysis the day after I went to go eat sushi, and it was a disaster. There was heavy metals. There was all kinds of stuff in there. It was actually scary. I went back a couple days later after not eating sushi. I drank a lot of water the day before. I went there. The blood was fine. So I think a lot of the stuff you digest ends up in your blood. So you eat meat, you're going to see that B12 residuals in your blood. But is it supposed to be there? I don't know. I believe your body can manufacture, given the right environment, everything you need if you give it, some of the right tools. Again, my opinion. So people are asking me how to fast, how to prep. Again, a lot of this is going to be an ebook. What I would say to transition is take your time. Week 1, just write down everything you eat for a week. Be aware. It's all about awareness to fast. How do you feel? What's going on in your body? And even life in general is all about what kind of level of awareness do you have. The second week, I would start with intermittent fasting. So just close your window up. Maybe just start with an 8-hour window, 12 to 8, 11 to 7. Only eat in that window. Outside, I wouldn't eat anything. This is the program my mom and I came up with for her. Something that she can do. And then try once a week to do maybe a mono meal, just dinner, and go 24 hours till your next dinner. See how you feel. Then week 2, I would start elimination of dairy first and the meats if I would do it again. And this is what, again, me and my mom have come up with together. Get rid of all the dairy, get rid of the meats. If you can't get rid of it, try cutting it in half week 1 based on your first week's journal. Then what I would do is, after meat and dairy, for sure, there would be grains would come next. After the grains, you're looking at beans, nuts, all these high fat, high protein, maybe even avocados. Again, these are all mucus forming foods based on the mucusless diet. And then you're going to look at oils and salts and, fine, and obviously refined foods, all the processed stuff that should be out right away too. No more McDonald's, no more potato chips. And then, the last one would be, natural sugars. It's not so much of a worry for me. Get it from the fruit and stuff like that. Anything refined should be out. That's the way I would prepare for a fast. You can do over a 3 or 4 week period. So maybe week 1, get rid of half, and you add another layer to get rid of, so that by the time you start to fast, your body's already been adjusting. And if you feel like it's too much too quickly, go 6 weeks, go 8 weeks. You got the rest of your life to do this. Just take your time, be safe, listen to your body is the most important. Before I did my fast, I was adjusting my diet. I actually had an ayahuasca ceremony not too long before I started, and for that, they talk about like no sex, no alcohol, which I wasn't drinking much anyways. And just reducing all the processed foods, the meats and dairies as well. So that being said, we'll move on. Another question was about the sex drive. Definitely changes. As a guy, usually are thinking about it a lot, and when beautiful women come by, you can't help but notice and look. But I noticed also that as a lot of things start changing in perspective, so did the need to always want to have that feeling. Didn't mean that you didn't still have a drive. It just wasn't at the forefront of everything, and it was really actually an interesting and good feeling not to have that all the time or most of the time. It's a subtle change, but a big change for me personally. So the drive is there, that if you and your partner are in the mood, and it makes it more about having that connection rather than always just wanting to do it from a physical perspective, if that makes sense. Someone asked me about breastfeeding and detoxing. I'm not an expert and really shouldn't be commenting on this, but from what I understand is you shouldn't do any detoxing while breastfeeding or pregnant. Again, check with your doctor. Stuff's going to come through the breast milk and come out. You should be eating as clean as possible, but I wouldn't suggest starting some sort of protocol or fasting while you're breastfeeding. Again, check with an expert on that. And as a mother, a lot of mothers use the excuse of, I have a craving, I want to eat junk food. Are you using that excuse, or are you really, really craving junk food? Is there something better that's more healthy for your baby that you can eat? Because whatever you eat, your baby's getting. So just please be conscious of everything you put in your body, especially when you're pregnant. People are questioning the food as a drug, the emotional attachments. They think, I'm a control freak. After 30 days of thinking about food every single day when I was fasting, at about the 30-day mark, it's finally subsided. And yeah, there's an addiction there. There's this really deep craving. I would almost compare it to when people say, like, I'm dying for a butt. I need a cigarette. I got to smoke. I have to. They don't really have to. They just really, really want to. They're not going to die if they don't smoke. It feels the same. Like, there's food right here. It's like, I really want to eat that food. Do I need to eat that food? And do I want to eat that food? That's the difference. That it took me 30 days to start really realizing and dropping that off. So I'm going to end the Q&A there. I got a bunch more questions, but I'm going to address them in the ebook for sure. Some things I want to talk about, like the protein theory, the calorie theory, water. I'm going to put that all in the ebook, so stay tuned for that. Now I'm going to post the great conversation I had with Martin about his experience, and I'll see you after that. Okay? Enjoy, guys.
Well, I've done quite a bit of fasting over the years. I actually started learning about it back in, I guess, 2007. 2007, I moved down to Union Square in New York. And there were a lot of, vegan and even some raw vegan cafes and raw vegan places there. And I sort of discovered them. I stumbled upon them by accident and started learning about raw vegan diets. And then there was a poster about someone who was going to be doing some classes about raw vegan cooking, how to prepare food, as well as cleansing and detoxification using a raw vegan diet. And so I sort of jumped into those classes and learned all about it, and learned all about, and then those classes on food preparation led to a series of other classes on fasting and detoxification and so forth. And so I ended up, starting to do juice fasts, with vegetable juices, basically, mostly green juices, but sometimes juices that had some, some fruit or sweet vegetables in them as well, and doing, complementary practices like colonics and enemas and so forth. And I just felt, a tremendous transformation in my health, and I just felt a lot better and a lot more energetic and so forth. And so I continued down this raw vegan path essentially for several years. And I was basically a raw vegan from, I guess, 2008 until I would say early 2012.
Okay.
And so as I progressed, along this path, within the raw vegan community, there's sort of two branches, right? There's the kind of high-fat, low-carb branch, which is led to some extent perhaps by Brian Clement at Hippocrates Institute and Gabriel Cousins over at Tree of Life in Arizona, who's written some wonderful books, by the way, which helped to inspire me, such as Spiritual Nutrition and Conscious Eating. And they are both, tend to be more in the sort of a low-carb, relatively low-fruit camp. Although they're okay with getting carbs from, things like, sprouted buckwheat or sprouted quinoa and stuff like that. But they're not big on fruit. And then you have the other branch of the raw vegans, which is, sort of, epitomized perhaps by Dr. Robert Morse in Florida and other people who are more, and Douglas Graham, I suppose, who wrote that book 80-10-10. And they are more in the fruitarian camp, where we should eat a lot of fruit and relatively low fat. And so the way I came at it, I didn't discover the high fruit people first. I discovered the sort of higher fat people first, so to speak, lower fruit people. So that's how I got my start on the raw vegan diet. But then eventually, through exploration and Facebook and reading and so forth, I came more into contact with the people who were eating a higher fruit version of it. And I knew from my own experience and learning that, eating a lot of fruit can be perfectly compatible with having a healthy raw vegan diet, as long as you don't combine it with a lot of fat and protein, as long as you kind of eat it on an empty stomach. And so I figured, I'm going to try eating more fruit on an empty stomach and just make fruit a larger component of my diet and see what happens. And that actually worked really nicely. And I felt even more energy, and I felt even better. And life was really going great until I around the spring of 2012. And then what happened is I changed jobs, and I got into a job that required me to do a little bit more marketing and sales and travel more around the country and do business lunches and business dinners and stuff like that. And this diet just wasn't compatible with that, really. It was just too difficult to do that.
Compatible due to inconvenience?
Partly due to inconvenience, but also due to the fact that if I were to go on a business lunch or business dinner, it would be very awkward to just say to people, "Oh, I'm not eating because I'm on a special diet." That would just be really weird, and especially if my boss were there and I did that, I could lose my job.
It's amazing the way society has forced us in certain ways to adapt in ways that is against what we want, but it's hard not to, right?
It's hard not to. It's almost impossible not to. But then, the other problem is, even when I would do that, then because of the condition that my body was in, first of all, being in a very kind of a clean state, and secondly, just the body adapts to whatever diet you're on, right? So my body wasn't necessarily producing the right enzymes and the right amount of hydrochloric acid and so forth, and the right probiotics to digest the kind of food that I would eat if I went out to a restaurant. So I would end up, getting sick afterwards if I would go out to eat with my boss or with, business lunches and business dinners and so forth. So I decided, I think I need to scale back this raw vegan diet thing, especially the high fruit, version of it, and see if I can find some sort of a balance that's kind of more sustainable, that allows me to be more social and, and go out more and so forth. And
so when you say get sick, can you be specific? Like, was it like diarrhea? Was it like just nausea? Was it like...
No. It was in some cases it was nausea, but that would generally be if I had, maybe some wine or something with the dinner, and if I had a little meat or something that would. The instances where I would get nauseous would be if my stomach acidity changed too rapidly, because on a high fruit raw vegan diet, your stomach acidity is very low relative to the average population, because your body doesn't need to produce a lot of hydrochloric acid to digest. Certainly, you don't need any hydrochloric acid to digest fruit. And even if you're on a raw vegan diet where you're eating a lot of nuts and seeds and greens, the amount of hydrochloric acid that you need is still a lot lower than for a meat eater. So there's not much of a mucus lining in the stomach to protect the stomach from hydrochloric acid. So the instances where I would vomit where I would go out and I would eat a little meat, and then I would have a little wine, and my stomach would get really acidic due to the combination of making the hydrochloric acid to digest the meat, and then also the wine, which is acidic in itself, and then I could just feel the acidity, and then I would vomit and I would feel the acidity coming out of me, and that would feel really good. But more typically, that would be the extreme situation. More typically, what would happen is I would start to eat, cooked foods, starches, cooked starches or what have you. And then within a matter of days, I would get cold symptoms, and I would basically, feel like I have a cold.
From starches, from like grains?
Yeah, from starches, not necessarily even just grains. It could be just potatoes or rice.
White potatoes?
White potatoes or sweet potato, even innocent starches. I find that, starches are somewhat congesting. Certainly cheese is somewhat congesting.
Cheese is worse.
Dairy is somewhat, congesting.
All dairy,
and I'm not saying, those are necessarily bad foods. It depends on the person. It depends on, the state of their body. And maybe those foods are less congesting for some people than for others. And I think that people who are used to eating those foods, perhaps, don't get congested by those foods to the same degree, because, their body is used to breaking them down.
It adjusts, yeah. The body's gotten used to it, exactly.
The body's gotten used to it.
Question, are you familiar with the mucusless diet, any of Arnold Ehret's work?
Yeah, so I read that kind of early on my path, and it kind of all, made sense to me. And I was following what you could call, I suppose, a mucusless diet for, certainly that period from 2007 through 2012 until I decided to, take a few steps back, so to speak, and try to recondition my body to be able to eat a more varied diet.
So, sorry, just to backtrack a bit here. So the first diet, the high-fat, low-carb that you started with, what year did you start doing that in?
2007.
Oh, 2007. And then the switch to the high fruit one, that was around midway?
No, that was more in 2011.
2011, okay. Yeah, because the mucusless, the high fats, they're not really big on, or any grains, and the starchy potatoes. Right. So I find it interesting that as I wrote down a note here about acidity versus the mucusless diet, you said the word mucus, so I took that as a sign that I need to look into that a little bit more. On a personal note, just to compare, right? Because they say like all these things that you're saying, that's mucusless, and you're having a reaction, so it makes sense when you felt like you had to eliminate and you felt the symptoms. They call that a elimination sort of symptom, where it's like the body's trying to eliminate the mucus that's
right.
come inside. So
right.
It's very interesting. Well, just another question. the difference from the high fat to the fruit, what was the main reasons why you shifted? Were you not feeling good? Was it curiosity? What was the main reason for change?
Yeah, the main reason for change was, first of all, well, there were two reasons. First of all, I learned about it, and so I became more curious about it. And secondly, I felt that, in order to maintain my energy levels and my clarity on the higher fat version of the raw vegan diet, I needed to do pretty regular periodic cleansing in the form of fasts and colon cleansing. And if I didn't do that, if I didn't do like at least a 5-day juice fast, once a quarter, and maybe either a 1-day juice fast, maybe once a week, or 2 or 3 day juice fast once a month. If I didn't do that on a consistent basis, and then incorporate some colon cleansing when I was doing maybe the longer juice fasts, I would start to feel sluggish. And so I felt that there was a certain effort required to kind of keep my body in a really sort of clean enough state to feel really good. And I felt like, I wonder if I eat a sort of a lighter, more cleansing diet on a day-to-day basis, consisting of more fruit and less fat, then maybe it would reduce the need to do these periodic, juice fasts or cleanses, which are, perfectly fine to do, but, they can be a little bit disruptive as well,
Yeah, interesting. Another question. The high fat to the more fruit-based, did you notice any difference in the body, in the joints, like how you felt physically? Was there any noticeable difference, or was it more of like a mental clarity change?
It was more of a mental thing because I wasn't having any physical problems at that point anyway.
Were you working out like regularly? Any exercise in your...
Yeah, I wasn't doing as much exercise as I should really, but, maybe once a week to the gym, something like that.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
One thing I should really point out, though, since you're asking me a lot of detailed questions, there's one thing that I neglected to mention, which is after I went on my raw vegan diet and started my cleansing path in 2007, 2008, I did develop some cavities in 2008.
Okay.
And I tested my vitamin D levels, and they were quite low. They were very low. And that may have had something to do with it. But also, I think that the body kind of stores toxins sort of everywhere, so to speak. And, you are what you eat. And even something like the quality of the teeth may not be ideal on somebody who had previously been on more of a mainstream diet. And I think, when you start to cleanse in a kind of a deep, thorough way by doing, juice fasting or some other type of fasting, water fasting, dry fasting, what have you, and colonics and so forth, eventually, there might be consequences throughout the body in terms of even the teeth. If
well, there was that dentist who did that long-term study. What was his name? About he went around the world testing.
Weston Price.
Weston Price, yeah, that's exactly what he said. Like your teeth are an indication of what you put in your body, and those who ate whole foods and healthier stuff and even in tribes in Central South America, in these remote places, had perfect teeth, lined, healthy. Yeah. And as soon as the Western diet came in, all the deficiencies in their nutrition were starting to show through their teeth.
Right.
So that's exactly what it could be.
And so I think that when I started cleansing, those prior deficiencies in my nutrition started to sort of show through in my teeth. But then I had the awareness of the Weston Price diet, and I had the awareness of what nutritional factors were needed to strengthen teeth. In particular, vitamin D and the vitamin K2. And of course, the body can convert a certain amount of vitamin K from greens. We get vitamin K1 from leafy greens, right? And so vitamin K1 is not an issue for for people on a vegan diet, but vitamin K2, in terms of food sources, only really comes normally from egg yolks or from dairy, from cheese, and so forth. And the only vegan source of vitamin K2 is from something called natto, which is a fermented miso, which is only available in certain Japanese restaurants. So the only way to get vitamin K2 as a practical matter, as a vegan, is supplementation. And so vitamin K2 helps to basically, the way it's been described to me, the way the dentists describe it, and the way Weston Price, described it, although he didn't call it K2, he called it, factor X or something, because they hadn't figured out what K2 was at that point. But it sort of shuttles the calcium into the bones and into the teeth, and makes sure that the calcium that you're consuming goes into the right place. So vitamin K2, along with, of course, vitamin D, are really good for strengthening the bones and teeth. So I started supplementing with a supplement that contained both K2 and vitamin D, as well as some sort of natural food-based calcium. And then my teeth strengthened, and I never really had that issue anymore. And in recent years, I haven't really continued with that supplementation, but I haven't really had the issue either. And so it suggests to me that the issue was because the teeth weren't really all that sound to begin with. And when you rebuild your teeth based on really solid nutrition, then you're not going to have an issue being on a high fruit diet or what have you.
Yeah. Well, I totally agree with you. I come from the school of thought, and this is my own theories. I have no science to back it up, but I think the body can create almost anything it needs, as far as vitamins and from nutrition. Like it's the transition that's important. When it's not used to doing something, and you make this big change, it doesn't know what to do, and then the deficiencies come out. And then eventually it finds a way to create it. Like even things like B12 or some of these other vitamins that are not present, I believe the body can create anything it needs once it gets into balance. And if it's out of balance, it's going to need the supplementation on a continuous basis. When you do a blood test, it's a snapshot of what's going on in your body at that specific moment. Is B12, does it belong in your blood, or is it just there because you're digesting something you just ate that came from a tissue in a cow, and a cow eats nothing but grass, but it has this, all this B12 in its muscle tissue. So these questions sort of come up in my mind. It's like, if a cow needs to build B12 to build its, to function properly, wouldn't it need to eat things that are high in B12? Like these are just some of the questions that, I ask, and I want to ask others to question as well. Like, things like gorillas, in the wild, some of them eat nothing but bananas. And they're massively strong. They don't need any protein. People are like, oh, you need protein to build muscle, right? But it's like maybe we're using these theories a little bit too much, and we're too rigid in our framework of thinking, where there are maybe other ways that the body can assimilate nutrients and build with that we don't know. We have a chemistry lab here.
Right. Well, also the body can recycle proteins and recycle amino acids to a large extent as well, if it's if the conditions are right.
Yes, exactly. So back to your story. So then, you noticed what was bothering you after all the business lunches and stuff, and so now you're still doing the business thing. You're still halfway in, halfway out.
Yeah, exactly. I still have sort of one leg in the sort of raw vegan kind of cleansing path, and another leg in the sort of business world where I want to maintain my ability to go out for a business meal without getting sick afterwards, and without having to necessarily get cold symptoms a few days later. And so I feel like I feel like my health has never really been at the same peak level that it was in 2011, 2012. So I'm thinking about kind of giving up the cooked foods to a larger extent again, and maybe going back on a lighter, more high fruit type of diet, and doing a little bit more cleansing and so forth.
Yeah, I would encourage you to go for it. Speak your truth. Go in the business meeting and let them know why. How it makes you a better business person. If there's more clarity, you're getting more done, and get them excited. If you can.
Right.
It's a challenge, right? I understand, but I would challenge you to go for it, and just be excited about how amazing it is, right? And no fear, because I came from that world, and at first all this other alternative stuff that I was doing, I was hiding it. So I was living like two lives. I'd be doing business and then meditation, all this stuff. Even
Yeah.
like the psychedelic stuff, going drinking ayahuasca. I was always keeping it a secret until
Yeah.
one day I had this powerful ayahuasca ceremony. It was like, just be yourself. If
Yeah.
people don't want to do business with you because of you're doing a good thing, you know what I mean? Because you're being who you are, you
Right.
probably don't want to do business with them. You know, maybe
Right.
there's a different path for you. And
Yeah.
it took me a while, a really long time to accept that in myself. It was very, very challenging because there's all this
that makes
fear,
sense.
right? So much fear,
Yeah.
like, what if I don't have this job? How am I going to support my family? You know, how am I going to make ends meet? But it was a slow transition. A little bit of
Right.
just,
We have to.
yeah.
I think we have to try to put fear aside. Yeah, absolutely. But also, I think that in general, amongst decent restaurants, or even amongst all restaurants in general, restaurants are recognizing that there is a trend amongst a certain percentage of the population
Absolutely.
towards healthier eating.
Absolutely.
And so I find that even now, even just relative to 4 or 5 years ago, relative to 2012, 2013, there's more salads in restaurants. There's a wider range of salads in restaurants. Restaurants that previously maybe only had one salad option now might have 3 salad options.
Exactly.
So it's easier to kind of eat a relatively light diet at a restaurant now than it was a few years ago.
Especially in New York City. I can imagine if you're in the Midwest in some mom and pop type towns where there's not going to be many options. But if you're in the Big Apple, I'm sure almost every restaurant has got a vegan, gluten-free, whatever option that can.
Yeah, and another thing that I've discovered recently that's been working, pretty well for me lately is that I found a place in New York in the East Village that sells really good quality dried fruit. Organic dried fruit, unsulfured. And so what I do with this dried fruit, oh, all right, beautiful.
It's my go-to. It's all this. The Costco has all these amazing options for these huge packages, organic, sulfite-free.
Right, and this is something also that's relatively new. I didn't see these in the stores like 3-4 years ago.
All
I
new
think
stuff.
this company that makes this is relatively new, and I've been seeing this also. And it's not just fruit; it's berries also. I guess berries are sort of broadly in the fruit category, but I think these are wonderful. Now, I don't believe in eating them as they are because I feel that they are too sticky for the teeth. And they're not in the right optimal condition to eat them, exactly the way they are. So what I do is I take them out and I soak them first.
And I let people recommend that. Yeah.
I let them soak in water. Although I think one could probably optimize that by soaking it in maybe a combination of water and lemon juice, or coconut water or green juice, or whatever you're drinking. You can just soak the fruit in.
Yeah, I agree. Soaking, a lot of people told me that. I just really make sure I really chew it well, so it's not like 1 or 2 chews and then swallow. It's like chew it until it's a nice paste. Saliva
but you're chewing it, but it's concentrated. It's so concentrated. The sugar that you're getting in that dried fruit is going against your teeth in a concentrated manner, in a more concentrated manner than what you would get in nature.
That's true.
And that can't be good for your teeth.
I carry with me a little jar of baking soda and sea salt. So I rinse my teeth periodically to make sure there's not all these extra sugars and acids just sitting there. So that's my solution. But I agree with you on the soaking for sure. It's a great thing to do. And they taste different too. It's a different texture when it's soaked.
Yeah, and if I soak too many, then I just take the remainder and I put it in a glass mason jar, and then I'll just have that later.
Nice.
And if I'm not going to have it until the next day or something, I'll put the glass mason jar in the fridge.
Exactly. Exactly. So there's options. People have more people will come up with excuses why it's impossible to do these things, but they're just, I think, it's their own fear and barriers to change. It's like, oh, I can't do that. It's too hard, or it's too much work. But when you think about it, it's actually a lot simpler to eat like this. When it's just fruit, you don't really have to worry about preparing or all that stuff. Dried fruit, so it's so simple.
Yeah, and there's another problem that I ran into though on a high fruit diet, especially before I discovered the dried fruit, which is just the high water content of the fruit causes me to have to urinate more often, but in particular in the winter in New York, where I live, when I go out in the cold, after being out in the cold for a short while, I feel the urge to urinate. And I feel like what's happening is that the cold causes my body's cells to contract. And I feel that that's a natural reaction to the cold, that the cells of our body contract and try to get rid of excess moisture in order to keep themselves warmer, because it's easier for the body to keep itself warm if there's not a lot of excess fluid there.
Makes sense.
So I feel like when I go out in the cold, my body is contracting and it's squeezing out the extra, fluids and extra potassium, perhaps. I notice this especially if I'm eating a lot of high potassium fruits, like bananas, apples, mangoes, and so forth, watery fruits that are high in potassium that are really great for hydration and for hydrating you. But I go out and I'm so fully hydrated that after a little while in the cold, my body cells sort of start to squeeze out that fluid. And it makes me ponder and question whether it's natural in a cold climate to be eating a really high fruit, super hydrating, high potassium diet. I feel like maybe my body doesn't want all that potassium in a cold climate.
Well, yeah, it's an interesting concept that I've been pondering as well, because I do a lot of the Wim Hof method stuff, so I'm out in the cold all the time and jumping in ice baths. And as I got longer into the fast, at about 30, 40 day mark, I started feeling cold, like the dampness. And I know we're going to talk a bit about TCM, traditional Chinese medicine, and your perspective on that. But the most interesting perspective I had was when you think about like grizzly bears or bears, how they hibernate. They're fasting all winter. They're hibernating to keep warm and use less energy. And like, I don't know exactly, but theoretically, piecing these things together is like, yeah, there's very low water content because they're not drinking, they're sleeping, and they're not eating either. So there's this interesting thing that they know how to do it. Like instinctually, as an animal, they know. And us, obviously, we've lost our total connection to nature and instincts and all that kind of thing. But I feel like it's coming back. Like you say, intuitively, you're having these questions, and this is why I want to share the information so people can start asking these questions and we can share this information. And if enough people start asking and trying and experimenting, like I didn't eat and I went on the cold and I felt great. Okay, now we have enough anecdotal evidence for all these people that are doing it. Okay, maybe there's something there that maybe we need a study. Studies always to validate, but for me, the best study is on myself, just going out and experimenting. So you want to touch a bit on how that sort of relates to traditional Chinese medicine? I know you're not an expert, but you've done some of your own research. So anything?
Well, I've done some of my own research, but traditional Chinese medicine, believes that certain foods are warming and other foods are cooling, right? And so we could look even at charts to find which foods are warming and which foods are cooling. And generally speaking, fruits tend to be more cooling. But even within the fruit category, there are certain fruits that are considered to be, less cooling and more warming. I think the redder fruits, if I recall correctly, the darker fruits tend to be, less cooling and more warming. They provide more nutrients for the blood. They nourish the blood.
So like Concord grape juice, maybe?
Like Concord grape juice, maybe to a certain extent. Maybe goji berries. Maybe prunes, dates, things like that. In general, darker foods tend to be more mineral rich. They have more mineral contents and they have more nutrients than lighter foods. I think darker foods tend to be more nutrient dense.
And what does TCM say about the way the food is prepared? Does it make a difference if the juice is cooked or raw? Will that affect the properties of it?
Well, I mean, TCM naturally believes that, cooking is, has certain benefits, and that cooking foods makes them more warming and less cooling, whereas raw foods are more cooling.
So therefore, another reason why in the Master Fast, the cooked pasteurized grape juice is what they recommend. They have different reasons for it, but I can see how that relates to traditional Chinese medicine, where they see better results from the cooked juice than the raw juice.
Right.
Maybe it's helping to balance that. Somehow.
Maybe. And cooking also breaks things down so that they get absorbed better, perhaps, and more absorbed, particularly minerals and so forth. And, you would think in a juice that wouldn't matter, though, that because it's just juice that your body is going to absorb everything. But maybe that's not entirely true. Maybe the cooked grape juice actually does get absorbed better than the raw grapefruit. grape juice. It's not clear to me.
And maybe also, the less energy to break down, the more energy to do other things like cleansing, healing, and all these things.
Right.
Interesting.
Right. But I also think that we should take what we can from the TCM, traditional Chinese medicine, and the Ayurvedic systems, but we can't believe everything that it says, completely in terms of how it applies to us necessarily, because I think that these systems were developed in a different time and place, and in particular, they were developed by a group of people who were living on starch-based diets and were pretty much forced to live on starch-based diets because of the food that was available to them at the time. And so, for example, if you're on a starch-based diet, because of the composition of your gut, microflora, of your gut probiotics and so forth, if you eat a bunch of raw fruit, on a high starch diet in general, you're going to get some gas and some bloating, and you're going to potentially get certain consequences. And so, your body adapts to a different, whatever type of diet you're on. And so the type of diet that people were on in Asia, thousands of years ago and even now, was a very high starch diet. So if you're going to come up with a nutritional paradigm like Ayurveda or TCM, traditional Chinese medicine, your nutritional paradigm is going to have to be one that's geared towards people who are on high starch diets. And so a lot of the details, I think, of what they teach in Ayurveda and TCM may not be entirely applicable to people who are not on high starch diets, or in particular people who are not on who avoid starches altogether, such as people who are on a paleo diet or a raw vegan diet that doesn't include a lot of sprouted buckwheat or other types of starches. And I think it's actually interesting that there's a connection between the raw vegan diet and the paleo diet, and that they're actually similar in some sense. And a raw vegan diet that excludes grains, that's just based on fruits, nuts, seeds, and greens, is actually a subset of the paleo diet. Even though what we think of as the paleo diet is a high meat diet, because the proponents, the people who came up with the paleo diet and are promoting it, tend to be more in favor of eating a lot of meat. But conceptually, what the paleo diet involves is the idea of eating the foods that were available prior to modern agriculture, right? Eating the foods that would have been available 10,000 years ago, when we weren't cultivating grains and we weren't growing potatoes, and we were just foraging for whatever we could find in nature, which would be basically fruit, greens, nuts, and seeds. And occasionally, our ancestors would have, killed an animal. And so, to me, the raw vegan diet is a subset of the paleo diet in some sense. And one can eat a diet that doesn't include starches. And if you're on that type of a diet, you're going to digest fruit a lot better, I think. Especially if you eat it on an empty stomach. And so I think some of the things that were that are taught in the TCM diet and the Ayurvedic kind of approach, aren't necessarily applicable to us.
Interesting. Yeah, you know what? That resonates with me for sure. And it's just trying to find what is the diet. What is the optimal human diet? And I think we're getting closer. And I think, interesting enough, it's moving away from food. It's not what do we eat, it's what do we not eat. How do we eat less and let our bodies do what it needs to do? So that's what I'm trying to do now. I'm trying to do one meal a day. I'm intermittent fasting most of the day. I'll have an afternoon fruit meal, and then for dinner I'll have a big salad. I'm trying to keep it at that. Okay. And maybe in between there I'll have some dried fruits in between if I feel like I need the extra snack. But the fruit is trying to be like one mono fruit meal, so I'll have like a whole watermelon or as much watermelon as I want, and then wait a certain amount of time before I eat anything else so I can fully digest it.
Yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense. But one thing I wanted to ask you, because you've been doing a lot of cold therapy. I know you trained under Wim Hof, and I'm wondering, during your the period where you were doing your master fast, and now, were you continuing to do regular, daily cold therapy, so to speak, where you were going out in the cold with hardly any clothes on, or doing ice baths or things like that, or did you stop that during your master fast?
I was doing it not as frequently as before, like the intense cold stuff, not as frequently, but I was still doing it. I felt the cold differently. It felt a little colder, damper at times. But a lot of, for me, the Wim Hof method is mindset. So it's if you can get that mindset, that focus, you can still overcome that feeling.
Right. Okay. But in addition to mindset, I agree with you. But there is something physiological that happens, certainly at the very least, with the brown fat cells, right? So when we have the exposure to the cold, we develop more brown fat cells that keep us warm. And the brown fat cells, supposedly, the research suggests that they have a higher metabolism than the regular white fat cells. So that kind of keeps your body at a higher metabolism, which means also that you're burning more calories. At least it would imply that. Right? It would imply a higher metabolism, at least conventionally thinking, would imply that you're burning more calories, which would mean that you would have lost even more weight on the master fast diet than you would have if you were not doing this cold therapy. And I'm wondering, do you feel that was true, or is that not true? Or do you feel that your body becomes so efficient and, when it gets into such a clean state, that the whole concept of calorie burning kind of goes out the window? Or what are your thoughts on that?
I think calorie burning is already out the window for me. The whole concept of calorie burning. There is something there as far as scientific way of describing what's going on with calories, but I don't think we know for sure how valid that is as far as energy use. Like it's just a way of describing what's going on, but the whole picture, I think there's a lot of elements that are not there. So I think it's a really good question. I think that once the body gets cleaner and optimizes, it works in a much more efficient way, using everything at its disposal, whether it's the brown fat cells and the mitochondria in there. But there is this feeling of an inner fire, and it's hard to know where that comes from. But like this inner warmth comes as you're doing the method, like the 2-mole breathing guys. So it's hard to say about burning calories and metabolism. I think these are all scientific words that are trying to describe what is going on. And from that perspective, I'm not really sure what it is exactly. My experience, the best way to describe it is I was still able to easily withstand the cold, and I felt a good amount of energy to do so. But it felt a lot colder than when I was eating foods. But based on our last conversation, I was drinking a lot of juice. And the next time I do this in the winter, I'm going to be very, very conscious of the dry fast versus the drinking and how that affects the way I feel. Because when you're doing the dry fasting, like the 3 or 4 days, you definitely feel different as well. So yeah, I would have to really pay attention as I'm doing it. It's hard to think back to find that difference. But right towards the end, like around like the last week or so, like I felt colder. But again, I was in Toronto and it was freezing outside. So, like would I have felt that cold anyways because it was so cold outside? I don't know. It was like I was in Niagara Falls and it was like, minus 10 Celsius, minus 15.
Wow.
So like it's cold. So you're probably going to feel cold regardless.
Yeah, absolutely.
If I'm inside or outside, there's that cold aspect to it. But that's a really, really good question that I'm curious to explore for sure.
Yeah.
So I think we went through a lot today. I'm curious, as time goes on, to continue the discussion, and if any other insights come up specifically with anything TCM or Ayurvedic related that you have insights on, and please share it, because a lot of people are asking those questions. A lot of people subscribe to those ways of thinking. So any way we can sort of I'm not saying to change it, but just provide different perspectives, I think is very useful in opening people's minds to new ideas. So
no, absolutely, we should definitely continue the dialogue. Yeah, absolutely.
Awesome.
Great chatting with you.
I wanted to wish you best of luck with your business and work, and encourage you to go with that feeling of what you want to do, and not be afraid to let people know that I'm doing this because I feel amazing and it improves all aspects of my life, and
Absolutely.
just sing it, sing it.
Right.
It's
Well,
needed.
thanks for the encouragement and the inspiration.
Awesome.
So,
We'll
look forward
talk
to keeping
soon,
in
Martin.
touch.
Yeah.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Okay. Thanks. Bye.
So that's it for today, guys. I hope you enjoyed. I hope you got a lot out of all this information that we're presenting here. I know it's a lot to digest, but pick the pieces that resonate with you. If something stands out, research it more, look into it. This is about us sharing, and I'm going to most likely create a group where we share all of our information. If you have anything you want to add, please email me, g@thewaywithin.me. Send me a Facebook message. Let's connect. Any experiences you've had with fasting or diet, I'd love to hear from you guys. So thanks again for listening. Enjoy the show. Next week we have, let's see who we got on the list here. We have Casper van der Meulen and Gerard Powell. Two awesome stories. Casper is he wrote a book called Mind Lift, and Gerard founded the first medically licensed plant medicine retreat center in the world in Costa Rica. You're going to love these two. Have an awesome week, guys. See you next week. Peace.